Something to remember as well is that if you do not want a ranged weapon to spawn, you can just click this X, and now when he tries to range attack, he'll use these settings. But if you have a ranged weapon set, he will default spawn that weapon and use it to attack. So next I'm going to go to the M4A4. We're going to go through its settings quickly. So this is a ranged weapon. We've got its equipping settings, so whether or not it uses an equip animation, so it's set to true. We have it set here. It's set to when it is equipped, it attaches to its socket. That's a socket that's on the AI skeleton. Then we've got use unequipped animation, again set to true, and then we have its unequipped animation. And when a weapon's unequipped by the AI, it can attach it to a socket on the body, so the weapon doesn't just disappear, he actually puts it on his back. And here we have its unequipped slot, so it attaches to its back. Hey guys, today I'm going to be going through the ranged combat settings in Smart AI. So I'm in the combat showcase and I've got one of our ranged soldiers selected. I've just selected the Smart AI component here and search for range, and that's going to bring up all of our settings for ranged combat. So our first ones are our animations. So if use range animations is ticked, instead of the AI using the default animations, he'll use these animations set out here. So that's just like the other behaviors. Then we've got range combat stance. So these animations are used when the AI is actually attacking. So this is useful for if you want the AI to be aiming down at sights while he's shooting at someone, but say he has his gun at his hip if he's sort of moving towards a position to shoot from. So it allows you to kind of switch between those modes, so you don't have your AI aiming down the sights all of the time, even when he's moving about. So that can be quite useful for that. If you want to use that those animations, you need to enable this, and those are set out here. Next we've got, don't need to worry about that, that's to do with the interaction point. So first we've got cam range attack while moving. It's pretty self-explanatory. It allows the AI to shoot while he's moving. We've got use range anim time frequency. So that basically means the time between each shot the AI takes is the length of the animation, of your shooting animation. So by default that's enabled, but you can disable that and use the range attack frequency instead. So if you disable that, he will attack every 1 second. So we're just going to leave that enabled for now. Cam range attack is a really important one. If this is disabled and your AI can't melee attack either, he just won't attack. So always make sure if your AI isn't range attacking that this is enabled. Next we have our range attack anim order. So this is just the order of which the range attack montages play. So this is just an array of montages. You can have your shoot animations here, and this controls whether it's in order of the array or randomly. Next we've got our ranged attack damage. So we've got the hitboxes, so head, and then we've got the damage value this side. So if the shot hits the head, he'll do 40 damage, and we've got all of those as well. So you can customize the damage for each hitbox. None is used if no hitbox is detected, so that's useful if your AI can hit buildings or other things that don't have hitboxes, so that is important to keep. Next we have range attack distance. So this is the distance that the AI will attack something. So he will move to be within 600 centimeters of a target. Then we've got our ranged reaction settings. I have a video on reaction settings because there's quite a few of them. So if you need to know more about that, you can check that out. But this is the ranged attack reaction settings there, so you can set those. Next we've got our ranged particle effect. So this is used, right now you can see we don't have any set, and that's because this character uses a gun, and that gun has its own settings for this. But if, say, you have a wizard or some kind of AI that doesn't have a weapon, he just shoots things out of his hands, for example, this would be where you set its particle effect, and this is the socket that the particle effect will spawn on. So by default it's set to right hand, but you can create a new socket on your AI skeleton and have it spawn anywhere you like. Next is use cover. So that will mean that the AI prefers locations behind cover. So like we have set up here, all these AI will move to be in a position where they're covered. So if you want that functionality, you can enable it here. Delayed ranged attack is useful for, say you have a long animation, say like a 5-second animation, and you want the ranged attack to happen at 2 seconds at that animation. You can set to enable delay ranged attack, and then set the delay time to 2 seconds. So he'll delay his attack until 2 seconds. Just to keep in mind though that the delayed ranged attack, these again only apply to the AI if you don't have a weapon. So the ranged weapons actually have their own settings for this as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next up we've got our ammo. Again, the ranged weapon has its own ammo settings. So here we don't actually have any set properly, but you can set a max magazine ammo, the amount of ammo that's reduced per shot, so by default that's just 1. We can set a reload montage, so the animation that's played for reloading. We have a max total ammo, so this is different from the magazine ammo because your AI can reload, and this is how much ammo it has in total. This is use ammo as whether or not the AI uses any ammo. This is whether or not he can reload. If this is disabled, he'll just use ammo straight from his total ammo. And start with full magazine basically means that he doesn't reload when the game starts. He'll already have a full magazine. Next up we've got our projectile settings. So we've got max hit deviation. So this basically means if the projectile is meant to hit its target, this is how much it can deviate by. As you can see by the tooltip, you want to keep this value reasonably low. This adds some variation into where your projectile will hit when it hits its target. We have accuracy, so that's set to 50% at the moment. So essentially 50% of the time the projectile will hit on location. You can set this to 100 or 10 or whatever you like. Something to keep in mind with projectiles is they're not instant like a trace. So if the target is moving and you still have this at 100%, he can still miss, because this just means that it will hit 100% where the target was when the bullet was shot. So that's something to keep in mind. Then we have max miss deviation. So if the projectile is meant to miss its target, this is how much it will deviate by in centimeters. Then we can set our projectile, so this is the projectile that will be spawned. Then we've got some homing settings. So this is our acceleration, whether or not it's a homing projectile. And then we have use projectile actor settings. This will basically ignore our homing projectiles settings that we've got here and use just its settings for movement and predicting where it's going to go. Next up we've got our trace. So if you're to use the trace settings, you just have to not have a projectile set. So if no projectile is set, it will default back to a trace instead of a projectile. So we've got our trace range, so this is how far the trace will go. We've got our radius, so how wide the bullet is essentially. Spread, the higher the number, the less accurate it will be. So you can play about with this. 1's pretty accurate, but something like say 20 would be very inaccurate. So that's something you can play around with. we've got decal lifespan. So our trace can spawn decals, so if it was to hit a wall, it can spawn a decal like you can see here. So we've got it, so if it hits a physics material that's default, it will spawn this decal, and decal lifespan means that it will stay there for 10 seconds. Decal fade distance, this is a distance that it will fade out of view. Then we've got our emitter settings, so if we hit physics material body, it will spawn blood, and then the decal size down here as well. Again, these are all these settings are for if there's no ranged weapon equipped, so this is just if the AI is attacking without a weapon. I'll go through the weapon settings after this. So next we've got strafing, whether or not strafing is enabled, and then we've got the min and max strafe distance, so our AI, when he's shooting at a target, he can strafe from left to right. Something to keep in mind is if he's in cover, so if he's behind one of these walls, if you have used cover on, if he considers himself in cover, he won't strafe. He'll only strafe if he's not in cover. Otherwise you can get some weird behaviour. Next we've got our range starting weapon. So you can see I've got this set to the AI M4A4, and that's his. They'll all spawn one of these at the beginning of the game. Next we have our damage settings here. So these are used when the AI is equipped with this weapon and not his component damage anymore. So you can set these here. Same thing, you have your hitbox and your damage value. Melee settings I'm going to go over in a separate video for melee combat, so we'll just leave that for now. Then we go on to our range settings, which as you can tell pretty much all of them are the same as the AI component, and then the same again for our trace and projectile. The same goes for if you want to use trace, you just clear the path for range projectile. Now it will default over to the trace settings. Next we've got our ammo settings. Here we can set our reload, and again it's all the same ammo settings as before in the AI component. The only new setting is no ammo behavior, so we can set what the AI does when he actually runs out of ammo completely. So you can set him to melee, unequip the weapon, or just do nothing. So you can change that to whatever you like. Next we've got our animation settings. So use holdable anims means that it overrides the AI component animations. So this is useful if, for example, you have a gun. So you can see our default anims, we've got our rifle, idle, we've got all of our rifle jump and movement animations setting here. And you can actually set specific animations for each behavior within the weapon as well, which is useful, so you can do that in there. Next we have our holdable mesh reload animation. So this is used for if your AI's gun actually needs to play an animation like it does when you reload, so you can set that up here. Allow emote animations, so this is like when the AI pulls out a phone or smokes. Those are emote animations. Generally, at least with the included weapons, I have this disabled because we don't want him to start using a phone while he's holding the gun. So by default I have that disabled, but you may want to enable that. We have our ranged attack anims, so we have an array here and we've just got our hip firing montage set. You can set the order, so in order or random, and it will play those when the weapon fires. Then here we've got our holdable mesh shoot anim, so the animation that's played for the weapon mesh when the gun fires. And that's pretty much it. So there's one other thing I wanted to cover, and that was the actual settings inside the projectiles, because these damage values are only used if the gun is firing a trace. If you're using a projectile, like this weapon normally is. Normally we're using the example projectile. You'll need to change some settings in here for damage, so we're going to go to that quickly. And the example projectile is just a child of the master projectile, so if you need to make a new one, you can just create a child and you'll have all these settings ready to use. So in here you can see we've just got our damage values, and these are used once the projectile hits something. We have our surface emitters and decals, decal lifespan. All of these settings are all the same as our AI component and our AI weapon, so you can set those things up in here as well. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope that you find this useful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for watching.